Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bright Kids. I'm teacher Janice, and today's lesson we will learn Unit 6, and it's all about meals. Let's start. Let's answer this one. Can you name three popular food in your country? Okay. Are those food also your favorite food? I see. Now let's read the text about meal and answer the questions. Eating is supposed to be one of the most pleasant things in life. Sometimes we are not sure if we eat to live or live to eat. However, these days, many people are being deprived of regular meals. Some folks claim they are too busy to take the time, or they skip a meal because they are dieting. The meal that is most often missed is breakfast, so the eater or fixer can stay in bed longer. Even though health experts usually insist this is the most important meal of all. In some cases, this phenomenon is because wives are working outside the home. In others, because husbands do not insist on breakfast. More convenient Western ideas about breakfast are becoming popular: eggs, toast, cereal, and coffee. Later in the day, lunches are also becoming more problematic, especially for salaried workers. The variety and quality of food seem to be declining, even as the restaurants themselves become more crowded and expensive. After work, it is usually an informal requirement to join co-workers in a meal and drinks. So, a family meal at home is out of the question for a lot of male workers. Now, let's answer this question. Which meal considered the easiest to skip? Yes, the breakfast. Okay. Now, how many reasons are given for eating? Okay. And what does a Western breakfast consist of? Can you name? Okay, that's great, my dear. Now, let's move on. Let's learn about intensifying adverbs. Now, in English, there are lots of ways of saying very or very much. Very or very much. For example, we can use words such as highly, bitterly, deeply, and utterly. So we can use these words. So these alternatives collocate strongly with specific words, and other combinations often sound unnatural. So instead of saying very, very much, you can use highly, very, very much, utterly, bitterly, and deeply. Okay? Let's move on. Now, highly. So, unlikely, unusual, successful, competitive, profitable, effective, controversial, recommended. So, let's read. Highly is used with some probability words like likely and unusual. With the exception of highly controversial, it is usually combined with very positive words. Extremely can also be used with all the opposite adjectives except recommended. Let's read the example sentences. It is highly unlikely that I'll finish my work on time. Julia's highly unusual behavior began to worry her parents. So here, instead of saying very or very much, they use the word highly. Now, how about absolutely and utterly? These are the collocations: ridiculous, stupid, impossible, wrong, alone, appalled, convinced, devastated, and miserable. Absolutely and slightly more formal, utterly, combined with adjectives with very extreme meanings, where we can't use very. For example, we say absolutely, utterly exhausted, not very exhausted. Whereas we say very tired, but not absolutely or utterly tired, right? Often, but not always, these words have negative connotations or negative meaning. Okay? Now, here, bitterly, deeply, ridiculously, and strongly. So let's start with bitterly. So these are the collocations: disappointing, disappointed, resent, criticize, regret, complain, cry, and weep. So, what does it mean? Or what are the comments? Carries a feeling of deep sadness, used slightly more in writing than in conversation. So, these words are usually used in writing than on speaking. Now, the next word here is deeply. So, ashamed, concerned, shocked, committed, moved, affected, hurt, regret, care, religious, and unhappy. So it means, or it collocates mainly with words associated with feelings, used slightly more in writing than in conversation. Now, the third word here is ridiculously. So these are the collocations: cheap, expensive, easy, low, high, long, short, small, large, and early. It suggests something extreme, which seems unbelievable or unreasonable. So you can use the word ridiculously. Now, how about strongly? So these are the collocations: oppose, influence, believe, deny, recommend, support, condemn, suggest, feel, argue, and object. So it collocates with verbs. Verbs again are action words, particularly verbs that relate to having an opinion. Now let's try to read the sentences. I was bitterly disappointed when I failed the exam. Professor McDelvitt was always deeply committed to her students. The restaurant was ridiculously expensive. I don't think we'll go there again. I would strongly recommend that you learn a foreign language. So, my dear, if you have free time, you can try to maybe take a screenshot of this table, or you can write it on your notebook for your reference. Now, let's move on. Now, let's practice. So, choose an adverb from the box to replace very in each of these expressions. The words in the box are utterly, strongly, bitterly, ridiculously, highly, and deeply. Now let's start with number one: very ashamed. That's great. Number two: very cheap. Okay. Number three: very controversial. Okay. Number four: very stupid. That's great. Number five: very successful. Number 6, very disappointing. Okay. Number 7, very opposed. Number 8, very ridiculous. Number 9, very easy. Number 10, very concerned. That's great. Okay. So, my dear, you did great in this activity, and I hope that you fully understand our lesson. So, if you have free time, don't forget to review and take down notes. Now, it's not time for me to say goodbye, and I really hope to see you again here in Bright Kids. Goodbye.